So far this year, Halifax police have received 800 complaints of domestic violence. Although abuse can occur in any relationship, women are primarily the victims and men the perpetrators.
I was surprised to see that during Men's Health Week, the HPD was launching an anti-domestic violence campaign targeting men as the leading cause of domestic violence. Which is obviously not true. On the screen you can see that, well, Stats Canada shows they're about equal, with only about 76,000 difference within 5 years, and men are more likely to be abused. But no, you gotta demonize it. Make it seem like men are beating everyone. Hide it all under the rug. Women beat men, and it's a serious problem that feminists do not want to point out. We have no funding, we have almost no programs, and no support. By pointing to men as the primary cause, you're just making the problem even worse. Domestic violence is not a one-way street. Men beat women, women beat men, women beat women, and men beat men. But no, men cause most, if not all, domestic violence.
As police, we're unfortunately all too familiar with the tragic consequences of men's violence against women.
Halifax Police Chief Jean-Michel Blais says addressing gender violence is a complex issue, an issue on which men need to take the lead.
We're firm believers that men's violence against women is first and foremost a men's issue.
My wife makes me angry, so I push her.
Today, Halifax Police and New Start Counseling launched a poster campaign called Being a Better Man. The posters are meant to be authentic and feature words and images that are supposed to resonate with men. The goal is to raise awareness of domestic violence.
It doesn't matter what part of society you live in, domestic violence happens everywhere. It happens everywhere.
She said, if I can't have you, no one can. The first bullet hit me dead in the center of the chest.
What is this?
I kicked him in his ribs, I punched him in his chest, and I hit him in back of the knee. And then he was once again doing his little thing, you can't hurt me. So I scratched up his face because this was an ongoing thing. It's like he was not communicating, he's not coming home, he's looking at other women, he's cheating on me, and I'm just frustrated.
I was attacked with scissors, ashtrays. I was hit with a marble chopping board. I'd have cigarettes put out on me. I don't think there's any object in the house that at some stage wasn't used as a weapon.
I'm getting 3 or 4 stitches in my jaw, and I'm telling them that I fell down and hit a TV.
I purchased a pug. Chubbs was his name. My favorite pug. He was just awesome.
One day he says Denise didn't want him to go to work. She asked him to spend the day with her. If not, she would kill his dog.
You stabbed him. Do that. That's operation. You stabbed him. Yes, I did.
In fact, if Sheree Maxfield was a man, she'd be labelled a monster.
Daniel spent more than a month in the hospital and suffered through 8 operations. He still carries around the scars, and it is a heavy burden. A daily reminder of the woman McDaniel says intentionally set him on fire, burning away his flesh, his ego, and his peace of mind. That woman was his girlfriend.
Was she trying to kill you?
I think so.
She said, do you remember what I said I was going to do to you? I said, Denise, don't shoot me.
This time, police say she did 5 times.
A gentleman was running up the street screaming, stop shooting, you're hurting him. He grabbed my hand, blood was shooting out of my mouth like a water faucet. I said, what is she doing? What is she doing? Is she reloading? He said, brother, you don't have to worry about her. She's laying dead at your feet.
Armendariz said that she jumped on Hogan's back. She began punching his head on both sides with both of her fists, that she then clawed at him, scratched his face. She then kicked the back of his right leg with her right foot, causing him to fall to the ground on his stomach. She then kicked the right side of his ribs with her right foot. I asked Armendariz if Hogan had struck her, and she said, no, he never touched me. Wow.
You didn't retaliate at all?
No.
Why?
No. It was just wrong.
He says he learned as a child over a game of Monopoly never to hit his sister, a lesson handed down by his father.
He told me one time, he said, you do that again and you'll pay for it. You don't hit girls.
A very different lesson from the one many little girls learn.
I was taught if any man ever says anything to me that's inappropriate, I get to slap him.
Did you ever fight back?
I wouldn't say back, but I did hit her once. It's the only time I've ever hit a woman. And, yeah, she actually won, because that's what her aim was to get me to hit her. Took her 12 hours.
What do you mean it took 12 hours?
From when she wanted me to hit her, from when I actually hit her. During that 12 hours, I had, probably got punched in the head about 50 times. I got spat in the face a dozen times. I got grabbed by the testicles and dragged to the ground half a dozen times. I got kicked, and eventually she cornered me and got in my face, and I hit her.
So you're being honest?
Yeah, I was instantly sorry, because, well, I could honestly say before that I'd never hit a woman in my life, and now I can't say that anymore.
It might surprise you to know that Gellis says 1/4 of all domestic violence cases involve men who don't hit back.
2 months in the hospital, Dale Wales only has one lung. 2 bullets are still inside of him. Another he wears as a necklace. Wells still has trouble breathing and walking, has yet to return to work.
Stratton says he knew a 180-pound tattooed guy would be laughed at if he asked for help.
There's 100,000 male victims in our society who, when they present themselves as victims, the best they can hope for is that they'll be taken seriously, but more often than not, they'll be laughed at or ridiculed. What do you mean? You let your wife hit you? Why would you let your wife hit you? Hit her back.
And he looked at me and he said, are you sure you want to get rid of Chubbs? Maybe you should get rid of your girlfriend. Hindsight, I wish I would have made that decision.
Research suggests men are 3 times more likely than women to keep the abuse a secret.
There's still a very big stigma about machoism with men.
Is there an element of shame or embarrassment in being a man and saying, I'm a victim of domestic violence?
Very much so, yeah. Well, because, even other blokes, mates, you can't control your woman, It's like, well, I'm not into controlling anyone.
You can't handle your woman? What's up with you? Were you embarrassed to call the police and say, I just got hit, slapped by my wife?
Pride is what he says silenced him for too long.
I've handled too many cases of men being either stabbed or killed by women. They don't want to talk about it, or they just think that it is something that will go away. It will not go away. The next beating is going to be worse than the last beating. Men are less likely to report the violence due to embarrassment or the assumptions that others won't believe you.
Why are so many of these crimes unreported?
You get a whole series of reasons why men put up with it. They love the woman, they think she will change, or if they do go and try and, say, for instance, go to the police, they get such a negative reaction that convinces them they shouldn't confide in them.
Because the dreadful thing about domestic violence as a man, not only are you being beaten up, but you can't tell anybody. You can't tell your male friends.
Researcher Richard Gellis says he's even had his life threatened by people who disagree with his conclusion that men are victims too.
How many death threats have you got?
10, 12.
Rick Stratton says that sort of active effort to hide information is dangerous.
I can't be an isolated incident. I can't be. And I know that there's something that's got to be done about it, because the longer we stay quiet and we cover and we lie, the worse it's going to get. And we're going to be using body bags.
Like many female victims, Phil kept up a happy facade. When he did finally go to police for help, he says a policewoman dismissed him.
She basically told me, just man up and deal with the problem, because, because my ex was quite small, like, say, she wasn't a large girl or anything like that. She sort of looked at her as if to say, how could she do any damage to you?
They're just not being believed. That silence is a killer.
Now, we know some women's groups will challenge what you're about to hear. A report which says 1 in 3 are victims of some kind of abuse. They simply just don't always report it.
40% of domestic violence victims are men. And I think this highlights something we often don't think about, which is domestic violence can affect anyone.
Latest figures reveal that men in England and Wales aged between 20 and 24 are just as likely to be victims of domestic abuse as women in the same age group. But more and more of them are coming forward. So is that a sign that women are becoming more violent?
Each year in this country, 600 men are killed by their wives, girlfriends, or exes. You hear the statistics for female victims of domestic violence.
We know that every 15 seconds a woman is battered.
But how often is a man battered by a woman in the United States? Well, the number is the same, every 15 seconds.
Now, the stats on domestic violence against males are a bit sketchy. Advocates believe that's because it's underreported, because men are ashamed to come forward.
Every reference in here is all pointing to the male being the perpetrator.
And what do you think of that?
It's just wrong, because it's not always the male who is the perpetrator.
The other thing is that women don't want to hear that women can be violent, because that goes against notions of femininity.
The trouble was I couldn't get the funding for the men's refuge. The whole subject had been hijacked by the feminist movement, and I could never get anyone to print the fact that men were also victims.
This very strong feminist agenda of the last 10 years has insisted that the violence is essentially from men to women.
Well, what do you think, Cherie, about men who hit women? What do you think about...
I think there should be something done about domestic violence when it comes to... What? I can't do
So what about women beating men? Do you think something should be done about women who beat men?
There's no shelters, there's no counselling, there's no services available to them. You know, we provide government-funded services for women, but we're not providing government-funded services for men.
Do you think more men need to speak up?
It would probably help, but people got to be listening when you speak up anyway, don't they? If no one's listening, it doesn't matter how loud you yell.